when a struggling student agreed to marry a 75-year-old stranger. He thought he was making the ultimate sacrifice to save his family. But within just 7 days, he would discover a shocking secret that left him questioning everything, including himself. What began as an act of desperation would spiral into a life-altering journey, testing the limits of his courage, loyalty, and belief in second chances. It all started one cold evening when Liam Jackson, a young law student barely holding his life together, stepped into a world he didn't belong to, a glittering gala filled with wealth and power he could never imagine. Little did he know, this single night would set into motion a series of events that would change not only his life but the lives of countless others forever. Liam Jackson adjusted his tattered backpack as he trudged up the crumbling steps of his tiny apartment. The air was cold, biting against his skin, but it was nothing compared to the chill he felt inside. His mind raced with thoughts of overdue bills, mounting medical debt, and the hollow ache of never quite being enough. The small space he shared with his frail mother and bright-eyed 12-year-old sister Ruby felt more suffocating with every passing day. A constant reminder of how hard life had become since his father's death 2 years ago. When he pushed open the door, the faint smell of soup greeted him, not a comforting aroma, but a stark reminder of how far they'd stretched their last few groceries. "Liam, you're late again," Ruby called out, her voice filled with a mix of relief and youthful exasperation. She sat at the tiny kitchen table, textbooks sprawled in front of her, determination shining in her eyes despite the dim light. Their mother, Karen, looked up from the couch, her thin frame wrapped in a faded blanket, her face pale and etched with quiet pain. Liam forced a smile, pretending everything was fine. It wasn't. As they ate their modest dinner, Ruby chatted about her day, her dreams of becoming a doctor shining through her words. Liam listened, nodding in encouragement, but his mind was elsewhere, weighed down by the ever-growing pressure of holding their fragile world together. Later that night, as the apartment grew silent, Liam sat alone at the kitchen table. The stack of bills stared back at him, mocking his inability to make them disappear. He ran a hand through his unkempt hair, the ache in his chest growing heavier. That was when his phone buzzed. A message from his classmate Jake lit up the screen. "Big charity gala this weekend. You should come, networking goldmine. Trust me." Liam almost laughed at the absurdity. What could someone like him, wearing borrowed clothes and counting pennies, gain from rubbing elbows with the city's elite? But as his eyes drifted back to the bills, an idea began to form, desperate and far-fetched. Maybe, just maybe, stepping into their world could be his only way out. Before I dive deeper into Liam's extraordinary journey, let me take a moment to connect with you, my incredible viewers. Where are you watching from today? Drop your country's flag in the comments below. I'd love to see how far this story reaches. And if you've ever faced a moment in life where the odds seemed impossible but you still fought on, hit that like button. This story of resilience and unexpected connections just might remind you why we should never give up. The next morning, Liam couldn't shake the idea. Jake's invitation felt ludicrous, like dangling a golden key in front of someone locked outside the gates of opportunity. Yet, as he walked into his law class that day, the weight of his family's struggles bore down on him harder than ever. The tuition he barely managed to pay, the groceries they had to ration, and his mother's worsening health. Everything pointed to one cold truth. He needed a breakthrough. "Liam, you coming this weekend?" Jake's voice broke through his thoughts. "I told you, man, this gala is packed with the kind of people who can change lives. Politicians, CEOs, even judges. You know, the types who like to mentor young talent like us. I don't exactly have the wardrobe or the time for that," Liam replied, avoiding eye contact as he fumbled with his books. Jake grinned, leaning closer. "You've got something better than a suit, man. A story. People love an underdog. Show up, make some connections, and trust me, you'll thank me later." Liam wasn't convinced, but Jake's words lingered. That evening, as he sat at the dinner table with Karen and Ruby, the topic came up. Ruby's face lit up at the idea. You should totally go. You always talk about how lawyers need connections. This could be your big chance. Karen, who had been quietly sipping her tea, looked at him with a mix of concern and resolve. She's right, she said softly. You've been carrying so much. Liam, if there's even a small chance this could help, you owe it to yourself and to us to try. But I don't even have anything to wear, he said, trying to brush it off. Though their encouragement tugged at his resolve. Karen smiled faintly. We'll figure it out. True to her word, she reached out to their neighbor, Mr. Willis, a retired salesman who had once been known for his sharp suits. By Friday night, Liam was standing in their tiny living room, trying on a borrowed blazer that hung a little loose on his shoulders. Ruby clapped her hands in delight. You look great, like one of those lawyers on TV. Liam chuckled despite himself, though the nerves were already building. He had no idea what awaited him in the world he was about to step into. On Saturday evening, Liam stood outside the towering gates of the grand estate where the gala was being held. He hesitated, his breath visible in the crisp air as luxury cars swept past him. Every instinct told him to turn around and leave, but the thought of his mother's tired smile and Ruby's hopeful gaze propelled him forward. With a deep breath, he stepped inside. The sheer opulence of the mansion was overwhelming. Crystal chandeliers illuminated polished marble floors, and the hum of polite laughter filled the air. Liam felt out of place, clutching the strap of his worn leather bag, a grounding piece of home in this unfamiliar world. He scanned the room for Jake but found himself drowning in a sea of glittering dresses and tailored suits. As he awkwardly adjusted his tie, a voice broke through his discomfort. You look like you'd rather be anywhere else. Liam turned to see an older woman with silver hair styled in elegant waves. She stood with effortless poise, leaning lightly on an intricately carved cane. Her navy dress shimmered subtly under the golden light. Despite her commanding presence, her expression was kind and inviting. I guess I'm not used to places like this, Liam admitted, his cheeks warming. She chuckled, her laughter soft but genuine. Not many are, but that doesn't mean you don't belong. I'm Evelyn Walker. She extended her hand, her grip firm but gentle. Liam Jackson, he replied, shaking her hand. Well, Liam, let me tell you something. In rooms like these, it's the people who think they don't belong who often have the most to offer. Her eyes twinkled with a knowing glint. Why don't we sit? You look like you could use a break from all this grandeur. Liam hesitated but followed her to a quieter corner of the room, where the noise of the crowd faded into the background. Evelyn gestured to an ornate armchair, taking the seat across from him. She studied him with a curious intensity, as if peeling back the layers of his discomfort to see the man underneath. So, tell me, Liam, she began, her voice calm but probing. What brings you here tonight? Networking, I suppose? Liam hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. A classmate invited me. He said it'd be good for my future. Evelyn nodded, her gaze steady. And what is your future? Liam, I'm studying law, he said, his voice tinged with both pride and exhaustion. I want to make a difference, help people like my family. But honestly, right now, it feels like I'm just trying to survive. There was a pause as Evelyn considered his words. Survival is no small feat, she said softly, especially when the odds are stacked against you. Something about her tone made Liam feel safe, as though he could let his guard down for the first time in ages. And so, he told her more about his mother's illness, Ruby's dreams, and the crushing weight of their financial struggles. Evelyn listened intently, her expression shifting between empathy and thoughtfulness. You're carrying a lot for someone so young, she said after a moment, but you're also stronger than you realize. Before Liam could respond, a member of the staff approached Evelyn, whispering something in her ear. She nodded and turned back to him. I hope we'll talk again, Liam. You're an intriguing young man. As she rose to leave, She placed a hand lightly on his shoulder. And remember, sometimes the most unexpected paths lead to the greatest opportunities. Liam watched her disappear into the crowd, his thoughts swirling. He had no way of knowing just how true her words would soon prove to be. The next morning, Liam was still replaying the conversation with Evelyn Walker in his mind. Her words lingered, not just for their kindness but for the way she seemed to see through him. There had been something deliberate about her interest, something he couldn't quite place. As he sat at the kitchen table with his mother and Ruby, her frail hands cradling a mug of tea, Liam's thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. Ruby rushed to answer it, returning with an envelope in hand. "It's for you," she said, handing it to Liam with wide, curious eyes. Liam tore open the envelope to find an embossed card with Evelyn Walker's name printed in elegant script. Inside was an invitation to lunch at her estate that afternoon, along with a note written in her own hand. "Liam, I'd like to continue our conversation. Please join me." His first instinct was to decline. What could a billionaire philanthropist possibly want with someone like him? But Ruby's enthusiastic insistence and Karen's quiet encouragement left him with little choice. By the time the clock struck noon, Liam found himself standing outside Evelyn's estate once more, nervously straightening the borrowed blazer he had worn to the gala. The butler greeted him warmly and led him to a sunlit sitting room overlooking the sprawling gardens. Evelyn was already seated, a steaming cup of tea in her hand and an assortment of pastries on the table before her. She smiled as Liam entered, gesturing for him to sit. "Liam, I'm so glad you came," she said, her voice warm and welcoming. "I hope you didn't feel too pressured by my invitation." "No, ma'am," Liam replied, though his nerves betrayed him. "I was just surprised." Evelyn chuckled softly. Surprises are often where life's most interesting moments begin. Their conversation began casually, with Evelyn asking about his family, his studies, and his aspirations. But as the minutes passed, the tone grew more serious. Evelyn leaned forward slightly, her piercing eyes locking onto his. "Liam," she began, her voice calm but deliberate, "I brought you here today because I see something in you, something rare. Strength, resilience, and a heart that refuses to give up, no matter how difficult life becomes." Liam blinked, unsure how to respond. "Thank you," he said hesitantly, though her words felt heavier than mere compliments. Evelyn set her cup down and folded her hands in her lap. "What I'm about to say may sound unusual, even shocking, but I ask that you hear me out." The air in the room seemed to still as Evelyn continued. "I don't have much time left, Liam. I've been diagnosed with a terminal illness, and the doctors tell me I have less than a year to live." Liam's breath caught, the weight of her words settling over him like a blanket of cold air. I'm so sorry," he stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. Evelyn waved a hand gently, her expression steady. "There's no need to apologize. I've made peace with it. But as my time grows shorter, I've been consumed with one question. What will happen to the legacy I've spent my life building? My foundation, my estate, my work. It all needs someone to carry it forward." She paused, allowing the gravity of her words to sink in before continuing. "That's where you come in, Liam. I want you to marry me." The words hung in the air, surreal and incomprehensible. For a moment, Liam thought he must have misheard. "Marry you?" he repeated, his voice filled with disbelief. "Yes," Evelyn said simply, her gaze unwavering. "It's not about romance or tradition. It's about partnership. By marrying me, you'll inherit my estate and gain legal control of my foundation. You'll have the resources to not only help your family, but to make a real difference in the world." Liam's mind raced, a whirlwind of emotions and questions. I don't know what to say. It's a lot." Evelyn nodded, her expression understanding. "I know it's a lot to ask, and I don't expect you to decide right away. But I believe in you, Liam. I see in you the same determination and compassion that my late husband once possessed. You have the potential to change lives. But you need the tools to do it. I want to give you those tools." Liam struggled to process her words. The offer was absurd, even insane. But as he thought of his mother's fragile health, Ruby's dreams, and the crushing weight of their financial struggles, the idea began to take root. It wasn't just about the money. It was about the chance to rewrite his family's future and his own. "Why me?" he asked finally, his voice filled with genuine curiosity. "You barely know me." Evelyn smiled faintly. "Sometimes, you just know. And I've spent enough time around people to recognize true potential when I see it. You remind me of the kind of person I once was, hungry to make a difference but limited by circumstances. Let me remove those limitations for you." Liam sat in silence, his thoughts a storm of doubt, fear, and a flicker of hope. "Can I think about it?" he asked. "Of course," Evelyn replied. "Take all the time you need. But remember, Liam, opportunities like this don't come often. Sometimes, the hardest choices lead to the greatest rewards." As Liam left the estate that afternoon, his mind was a whirl of emotions. The weight of the proposal was almost unbearable. But so was the thought of what it could mean for his family. When he returned home, Karen and Ruby were waiting for him, their faces etched with anticipation. "What happened?" Ruby asked eagerly. "Why did she invite you?" Liam hesitated before sharing the details of Evelyn's proposal. As he spoke, Karen's expression shifted from shock to quiet contemplation. "It's a lot to take in," she said softly. "But maybe this isn't just about us. Maybe it's about what you can do with this opportunity, for others, not just for yourself." Ruby's eyes lit up with a mix of wonder and determination. "You always said you wanted to make a difference. Maybe this is how you do it." Liam looked at his family, the people he had fought so hard to protect, and felt the weight of their trust. It wasn't just his future on the line. It was theirs, too. That night, as he lay awake staring at the cracked ceiling of his room, Evelyn's words echoed in his mind. Sometimes, the hardest choices lead to the greatest rewards. By morning, his decision was made. He would accept Evelyn's proposal not for himself, but for the people he loved and the future he hoped to build. The morning of the wedding dawned quietly, the soft light filtering through the thin curtains of Liam's room. He sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the suit hanging neatly on the door. Still didn't feel real. The decision he'd made seemed to exist in some surreal space between necessity and disbelief. His mother's gentle knock broke his reverie. "You're going to be late if you don't get moving," Karen said softly, though her voice carried a mixture of pride and worry. Liam nodded, his throat tight as he rose and began dressing. The suit, borrowed from the same neighbor, still didn't fit perfectly, but it would have to do. Ruby appeared in the doorway, her wide eyes shining with both excitement and a touch of sadness. "You look like a movie star," she said, forcing a grin. Liam chuckled, pulling her into a hug. "Thanks, kiddo. You ready to be my cheering section?" "Always," she whispered, holding on just a little longer than usual. The ceremony was held at Evelyn's estate, an intimate gathering with only a handful of witnesses. Karen and Ruby sat in the front row, their presence a steadying force as Liam stood at the altar. Evelyn appeared moments later, her elegant navy dress flowing as she walked steadily with the help of her cane. Despite her frailty, she radiated an air of quiet dignity that silenced the room. When she reached his side, she gave him a small smile, her eyes filled with something Liam couldn't quite place. Gratitude, perhaps, or hope. The vows were simple, spoken without flourish but with sincerity. When Liam said, "I do," his voice wavered slightly, but he met Evelyn's gaze with resolve. As the officiant pronounced them married, there was no kiss, only a quiet handshake that felt more like the sealing of a pact. Afterward, a small reception was held in the dining room, where Evelyn mingled with her guests as if nothing extraordinary had happened. Liam sat with his family, his thoughts still spinning. Karen reached across the table, placing her hand on his, You did the right thing, Liam, she said softly. This is going to change everything. Later that evening, Evelyn invited Liam into her study. It was a grand room, lined with shelves of leather-bound books and adorned with artwork that spoke to her refined taste. She gestured for him to sit across from her at the massive oak desk. Now that we're officially partners, she began, her voice calm and measured. There are things you need to understand. Liam nodded, his palms resting on his knees as he leaned forward slightly. He wasn't sure what to expect. First, Evelyn said, sliding a folder across the desk. This is a comprehensive overview of the Foundation's current projects. I want you to familiarize yourself with every detail. These aren't just numbers on a page, Liam. They represent lives. Real people who are counting on us. He opened the folder, his eyes scanning the documents filled with budgets, names, and handwritten notes in Evelyn's precise script. It was overwhelming, but also awe-inspiring. Second, she continued, you'll accompany me this week to visit some of these projects. I want you to see the impact of this work firsthand. It's important that you understand the weight of what you're inheriting. For the next 7 days, Liam's world expanded in ways he never imagined. Each morning, Evelyn's assistant, Clara, would whisk them away to a different part of the city. They visited shelters where families escaping domestic violence found safety and hope. They toured schools where underprivileged children thrived thanks to the Foundation scholarships and resources. They walked through community centers buzzing with life, where job training programs gave people a chance to rebuild their lives. First, Liam felt like an outsider, unsure of his place in these spaces. But Evelyn's unwavering confidence in him began to erode his self-doubt. She introduced him not as her successor, but as her partner, and the warmth with which people greeted her slowly extended to him. One day, as they sat in a small classroom listening to a young girl share her dreams of becoming a doctor, Evelyn leaned toward Liam and whispered, "This is why we do what we do, to give someone like her the chance to dream, and to make those dreams a reality." Liam nodded, his chest tightening as he watched the girl's face light up. For the first time, he began to see the scope of what Evelyn had built and the enormity of the responsibility she was entrusting to him. In the evenings, back at the estate, Evelyn would invite Liam to her study. They would sit by the crackling fireplace, sipping tea as she shared stories from her life. She spoke of her late husband, a man of quiet conviction who had inspired her to dedicate her wealth to philanthropy. She spoke of the challenges she had faced as a woman in a world that often dismissed her, and the moments of doubt that had shaped her journey. "I wasn't always as sure of myself as I am now," she admitted one night, her voice tinged with vulnerability. "But I learned that strength isn't about never being afraid. It's about doing what needs to be done, even when you are." Liam listened intently, soaking in her wisdom. She reminded him of his father in some ways, steady, principled, and fiercely determined to make the world a better place. On the 6th day, Evelyn handed Liam a leather-bound journal. "This is for you," she said, her voice softer than usual. "It's my personal record of everything I've learned, everything I've hoped for. When I'm no longer here, I want you to read it." Liam took the journal, his fingers brushing over the worn leather. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I don't know if I'll ever be able to live up to what you've built, but I promise I'll try." Evelyn smiled, her eyes glistening. "That's all I ask." By the 7th day, Evelyn's health began to visibly decline. Her steps were slower, her hands trembled more, but her determination never wavered. That evening, she called Liam to her bedside. She was pale, her breathing shallow, but her eyes still held that familiar fire. "Liam," she said, reaching for his hand, "you've done more than I ever hoped for in these few days. I can leave this world in peace, knowing that everything I've worked for is in your hands." Tears streamed down Liam's face as he squeezed her frail hand. "I won't let you down," he whispered. Evelyn smiled faintly. "I know you won't. You've already made me proud." That night, Evelyn Walker passed away in her sleep, her face serene, as if she had finally found the rest she deserved. Liam sat by her bedside, clutching the journal she had given him, the weight of her legacy settling over him like a heavy, sacred mantle. She was gone, but her vision, her kindness, and her unshakable faith in him would stay with him forever. The house felt unbearably quiet the morning after Evelyn Walker's passing. The staff moved silently, their faces drawn with grief as they carried out their duties. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, bathing the estate in an ironic golden glow that only deepened the sense of loss. Liam sat alone in the study, his hands trembling as he turned the leather-bound journal over in his lap. It was as if Evelyn's spirit lingered in the room, her voice whispering softly from the pages he had yet to open. He had spent most of the night by her side, unwilling to leave even after her frail hand had gone cold in his. Now, as he stared at the journal, the enormity of what she had left him began to sink in. Her work, her vision, her legacy, it was all his to carry forward. But how could he possibly live up to the woman who had built so much? Who had believed in him when he barely believed in himself? His thoughts were interrupted by Clara, Evelyn's assistant, who stepped into the room with a gentle knock. "Liam," she said softly, her voice thick with emotion. "The board of the foundation will need to meet soon. There are formalities to address." But Evelyn left detailed instructions. She always planned ahead. Liam nodded, though he felt unsteady. "Thank you, Clara," he murmured. I'll need some time to prepare." "You're not alone in this," she said, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Evelyn saw something in you. She believed in you, and so do I." After she left, Liam finally opened the journal. The first page bore Evelyn's neat, flowing script. "To Liam, my partner, my friend, my hope for the future." His throat tightened as he read on. "If you are reading this, it means my time has come. Do not mourn me for long. Liam, my life has been full, my purpose fulfilled. Instead, focus on what lies ahead. The world needs people like you, people who understand struggle, who carry compassion in their hearts and strength in their actions. You have the power to make a difference, not because of what I've given you, but because of who you are." Tears blurred Liam's vision as he turned the pages, reading her reflections on life, her battles with self-doubt, and her unwavering commitment to justice. The journal wasn't just a roadmap for the foundation. It was a window into her soul. Each word felt like a gift, a quiet reassurance that he wasn't alone in this journey. By the time Liam closed the journal, a sense of clarity had begun to take shape. He couldn't fill Evelyn's shoes, they were too vast, too extraordinary, but he could walk his own path, guided by the principles she had instilled in him. Her legacy wasn't just about the foundation. It was about the lives she had touched, the hope she had inspired. And now, it was his turn to carry that torch. The following days were a blur of meetings and preparations for Evelyn's memorial. Liam found himself standing before the board of directors, their eyes heavy with grief and skepticism. Robert Hayes, one of the older members, cleared his throat as he leaned forward. "Mr. Jackson, with Evelyn gone, the responsibility of this foundation falls to you. I must admit, some of us have concerns about whether you're ready for such a monumental task." Liam met his gaze, his heart pounding but his resolve firm. "I understand your concerns," he said, his voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "Evelyn's shoes can't be filled, and I won't pretend otherwise. But she believed in me, and I believe in the mission she built. I'm not here to replace her. I'm here to honor her legacy and carry it forward." A murmur rippled through the room, a mixture of doubt and reluctant approval. Linda Grayson, another board member, nodded slowly. "Actions speak louder than words. Mr. Jackson, let's see what you can do." The memorial service was held in the gardens of Evelyn's estate, a fitting tribute to the woman who had dedicated her life to growth and renewal. Friends, family, and beneficiaries of the foundation gathered to pay their respects. Liam stood among them, feeling the collective weight of their grief and gratitude. When it came time for him to speak, he stepped forward, his hands gripping the edges of the podium. The sea of faces before him blurred momentarily. But then he took a deep breath, grounding himself in the memory of Evelyn's unwavering gaze. Evelyn Walker was more than a philanthropist, he began, his voice resonating with quiet strength. She was a force of nature, a woman who saw the world not as it was, but as it could be. She believed in second chances, in the power of compassion, and in the potential of every person she met. She changed my life in ways I can never fully express. And I know I'm not the only one. He paused, scanning the crowd. Evelyn once told me that legacy isn't about what you leave behind. It's about the lives you touch along the way. Her legacy is all of us, and it's up to us to carry her vision forward. I promise to do everything in my power to honor her memory, not just through words, but through action. The applause that followed was quiet at first, then grew into something stronger, more heartfelt. As Liam stepped back, he felt a surge of determination. This wasn't just about Evelyn anymore. It was about the countless people who depended on the foundation and the belief that even the smallest act of kindness could create ripples of change. Later that evening, Liam returned to the study, now a space that felt as much his as it had been Evelyn's. He placed the journal back on the desk, its presence a comforting reminder of her guidance. Looking out the window at the sprawling gardens bathed in moonlight, he whispered, "I'll make you proud." Evelyn Walker was gone, but her legacy was alive, alive in the work she had started, in the lives she had touched, and in the young man who had promised to continue her fight. As Liam sat in the quiet of the study, the weight of responsibility no longer felt like a burden, felt like a gift. In the weeks following Evelyn Walker's memorial, the mansion's once somber silence gave way to a quiet hum of activity. Liam Jackson was no longer just a guest in her home. He was its steward, its unlikely heir. The foundation's work pressed on, relentless and vital, and Liam found himself in the center of it all, carrying the weight of Evelyn's vision while navigating a world that still felt foreign to him. Every morning began the same. Liam would sit at the large oak desk in Evelyn's study, the leather-bound journal open before him. Her words had become his compass, a steadying force as he tackled the mountain of responsibilities she had left behind. The journal was filled with more than just instructions. It was her heart, her fears, and her hopes for the foundation's future. He read it not as a manual, but as a conversation, her voice guiding him even in her absence. His first priority was to visit every project under the foundation's care. Clara, Evelyn's trusted assistant, accompanied him on these trips, helping bridge the gap between the old leadership and the new. Together, they met with staff, volunteers, and the people whose lives had been transformed by Evelyn's work. At a youth shelter, a teenage boy named Marcus hesitantly approached Liam. "You're the new guy, right? The one Miss Evelyn trusted?" he asked, his voice a mix of curiosity and skepticism. Liam crouched to meet his gaze. "That's right. I'm here to keep the work going." Marcus's expression softened. "She always said we deserved a second chance. I hope you believe that too." "I do," Liam said firmly, placing a hand on the boy's shoulder. "I believe in it because Evelyn believed in you, and so do I." Moments like these fueled Liam, grounding him in the importance of the work. But not everyone shared Evelyn's faith in him. The foundation's board of directors remained watchful, their doubts lingering like a shadow over every decision he made. At one meeting, Robert Hayes leaned back in his chair, his tone pointed. "Mr. Jackson, while it's admirable that you're diving into this work, you lack the experience required to navigate the complexities of an organization this size. How do you intend to handle donor relations, legislative barriers, and the sheer scale of our projects?" Liam met his gaze, his hands steady despite the tension in the room. "You're right. I don't have years of experience, but I have something just as valuable: a deep understanding of what this foundation means to the people it serves. Evelyn didn't choose me because I was the most qualified on paper. She chose me because she believed I could carry her vision forward. And I won't let her down. The room fell silent, the weight of his words sinking in. Linda Grayson, one of the more open-minded board members, gave him a nod of cautious approval. "Then prove it," she said simply. And prove it he did. Over the next few months, Liam threw himself into the work with relentless determination. He worked alongside the staff, not above them, earning their respect through his actions. He met with donors personally, sharing stories from the projects he had visited, humanizing the numbers and statistics with the faces of those who had benefited from the foundation's work. One particularly pivotal moment came during a high-profile fundraising event. Liam stood before a crowd of polished, skeptical faces, many of whom had expressed doubts about his ability to lead. Clutching a microphone, he began his speech not with statistics, but with a story. "I met a young girl last week named Maya," he said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "She's 12 years old, bright as the sun, and dreams of becoming a scientist. Maya comes from a community where opportunities are rare and hope is even rarer. But because of the programs this foundation supports, Maya now believes her dreams are possible." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle over the room. Evelyn Walker built this foundation not just to change numbers on a page, but to change lives. That's what this work is about. Giving people like Maya a chance to believe in a future they never thought they'd have. And that's why I'm standing here, asking for your partnership. Not for me, but for them. The applause that followed was hesitant at first, then grew into something genuine. It wasn't just approval, it was trust. Hard-won but deeply earned. Back at the estate that evening, Liam sat in the study, staring out at the moonlit gardens. The day's victories were small but significant, and for the first time, he felt a sense of belonging, not to the wealth or the power that had once intimidated him, but to the mission that had become his own. Clara entered quietly, setting a cup of tea on the desk. "You did well today," she said with a smile. "Evelyn would have been proud." Liam nodded, his gaze distant. "It still feels overwhelming sometimes, like I'm carrying something too big for me." Clara placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "You're not carrying it alone, Liam. You have all of us, and you have Evelyn's guidance. You're exactly where you're meant to be." Her words settled over him like a warm blanket. He glanced at the journal on the desk, its familiar weight grounding him. Evelyn's journey had ended, but his was just beginning. And as he sat there, surrounded by the echoes of her wisdom and the growing belief of those around him, he knew he was ready to face whatever lay ahead. The future was uncertain, but it was full of possibility. And for the first time in years, Liam felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be, at the heart of something bigger than himself, building a legacy that would endure long after he was gone. Evelyn Walker's work was far from over, and with every step forward, Liam was determined to honor her memory by creating a future filled with hope, justice, and opportunity for all. Months turned into years, and Liam Jackson grew into the role Evelyn Walker had envisioned for him. The foundation flourished under his leadership, expanding its reach into more underserved communities, creating programs that uplifted families, and offering scholarships that turned impossible dreams into tangible realities. Yet, through all the success, Liam never forgot the quiet beginning of his journey, the weight of Evelyn's trust and the unwavering faith she had placed in him. One crisp autumn morning, Liam found himself standing in the middle of a bustling community center, one of the foundation's latest projects. The air buzzed with laughter and energy as children attended tutoring sessions. Adults practiced new skills in job training workshops, and families shared meals together. A young woman approached him hesitantly, holding the hand of a little boy with wide, curious eyes. "Are you Mr. Jackson?" she asked, her voice tinged with both awe and gratitude. "I am," Liam said with a warm smile. crouching to meet the boy's gaze. "And who's this?" "This is my son, Julian," she said, her voice cracking slightly. "We were homeless last year, but this center, it saved us. Julian has a place to learn now, and I just got hired at a job I never thought I'd qualify for. I just wanted to thank you. I don't know where we'd be without you or Miss Evelyn." Liam felt a lump rise in his throat as he looked at Julian's shy smile and the hope in his mother's eyes. "You don't have to thank me," he said gently. "This is what Evelyn believed in. Helping families like yours find the future you deserve. And seeing you both here, thriving, is thanks enough." As they walked away, Liam turned to Clara, who stood nearby with a knowing smile. "This," he said quietly, gesturing toward the bustling room, "is what it's all about. Evelyn was right. It's not about the money or the power, it's about the people." That evening, back at the estate, Liam found himself once again in Evelyn's study. The room, with its towering bookshelves and warm wooden tones, had become a place of reflection and purpose for him. He opened the leather-bound journal, running his fingers over the pages filled with Evelyn's elegant handwriting. Though he had read it cover to cover countless times, her words still had the power to guide him. He turned to one of her final entries. "Legacy isn't about what we leave behind. It's about the seeds we plant while we're here. If those seeds grow into something greater, then we've truly lived." Her words resonated deeply, a reminder of why he had taken on this journey. Liam glanced at the photo of Evelyn on the desk. Her eyes filled with the same determination that had carried him through his darkest moments. "You were right," he whispered. "Every word." In the weeks that followed, Liam launched a new initiative in Evelyn's name, a scholarship program for underprivileged youth with big dreams but limited resources. At its inaugural ceremony, Liam stood before a crowd of young students and their families, his heart swelling with pride and hope. "This program isn't just about funding education," he said, his voice steady but emotional. "It's about believing in people, just like Evelyn believed in me. She taught me that with the right support, anyone can rise above their circumstances. And today, we're continuing that mission." The applause that followed wasn't just polite. It was filled with genuine appreciation, a reflection of the lives already changed by his efforts. That night, Liam visited Evelyn's grave for the first time since her passing. The sun dipped low on the horizon, casting the sky in hues of orange and gold. He placed a single white rose on her headstone, the simplicity of the gesture mirroring the purity of his gratitude. "I hope I'm making you proud," he said quietly, his voice carried by the gentle breeze. "Everything I do, it's because of you." As he walked back to his car, Liam felt a profound sense of peace. The road had been long and filled with challenges, but it had also been transformative. Evelyn's legacy was no longer just hers. It was theirs, intertwined in a way that would continue to ripple outward, touching lives and inspiring hope for generations to come. The mansion lights twinkled in the distance as Liam drove home, a beacon of what had been and what was still to come. He had found his purpose, not in the wealth or grandeur of his new life, but in the impact he could make through it. And as the stars filled the night sky, he made a silent vow to honor Evelyn's memory, not just in action, but in the kindness and compassion he carried forward every day. Her faith in him had changed his life, and now it was his turn to pass that faith on to others. Together, they had built a legacy, and with each step, Liam was determined to keep building a world defined by hope, justice, and opportunity for all.